So Josh, thank you for joining me. I know you from Zenith. You're a poker player and coach. So yeah, it's a pleasure to have this conversation with you here today. We had a call last week, and you said you coach many people from the Zenith brand, but you said they don't know so much about your journey, really. So I'm really curious to hear your journey and share it with the community and also with the viewer here on YouTube.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So Karim and I met several years ago, actually, somewhat coincidentally. I think it was through a friend of mine who solicited some of your services. And yeah, currently I'm a poker pro living in Las Vegas. And most of my time as a professional coach has been with Zenith, the Zenith brand. I have done work with Run It Once, which has been great as well. But most of my, in-depth work and the work I'm most proud of has been with Zenith. So very happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So can you tell us about your poker journey? As you said, you worked with different brands, you coach people by now, you live in Las Vegas. So a lot of people would dream about having this lifestyle.
Yeah. So I got to start off by apologizing for the boxes I have in the background of my video here. I am currently moving. My girlfriend and I just decided to get a place together. So, I'm currently in my early 20s. So, lots of life changes going on as most people do in their 20s. So yeah, of course, I'm ecstatic to be a poker pro living in Las Vegas. It's a lifestyle that 12-year-old Josh could not have dreamed of course, and however, there's obviously like a countless list of pros and cons. However, as far as like my specific journey, so I grew up in North Texas, and I grew up very poor. I mean, American poor. It's different from what other cultures would consider poor. I was lower middle class in America. I was never on the street or starving or anything like that. However, I was lower middle class, and it was a no frills lifestyle, and I ended up on a football scholarship to college, where I ended up studying math and computer science, and which was, a huge blessing. I was very lucky to have that, and enjoyed it a ton. When I was in school, I ended up taking a class on game theory, where I was introduced to poker, actually. A lot of kids that are introduced to poker during college, it's usually because they have some friends that play poker, or there's like some poker club at the school. Mine was much more independent, where I found poker mildly interesting through reading, and so I just deposited some money on Bovada, and played some microstakes online, and found it very interesting. So over the course of like 6 months, it was more just like me probing the information that was very, very publicly available online, which honestly, as far as like high level content goes, is not much. There's going to be like some paid training sites and stuff, but if you just Google like free poker training material, it's just going to be like pre-flop ranges, and that's about it. There's going to be Run It Once that does a ton of advertising, probably. I honestly haven't looked into it, but it's still $60 a month minimum, which if you're just a broke college student, you just have a mild interest in poker, you have no interest in that. So it was more just like probing around, seeing what I could find. And I came across the Zenith Facebook group when I was, I don't know, probably late in my junior year of college. And so I started with that, and so weird. I'm playing 25NL online, and Zenith is like introducing me to solvers, and I'm buying a GTO Plus license, and I'm 19. But in hindsight, it's all just unbelievable. Like, if I could just like go back to the previous Josh, I would just tell him, save your money, study a bunch, and then we'll see what happens. But of course, I'm a kid. I don't know any better. So, I really dive deep into the theory streets, and I'm playing 25NL online. The game is just so intriguing to me at this point. I'm playing 25NL online, and then I'm playing 13NL live, which, to be clear, I did not have nearly enough of a roll for. I was very, very broke.
Yeah.
Cannot be exaggerated, like how many less buy-ins than I should have had than I did at the time. So I'm playing like 1-3 live, and I'm just like murdering. I'm just like taking everyone's mortgage payments because I'm running. I'm just sun running. So of course I find poker very interesting because I'm sun running. Mm-hmm. And so that's really how I got into poker. If I had not run as hot as I did at 1-3 when I first got into poker, I would not be a poker pro. I would be a software engineer, which honestly I would probably be better off, but here I am. So anyhow, I digress. If you're on the verge of like, maybe interviewing for like a 180K job, or like playing 100NL online, I highly suggest you just interview for the software job. Cannot be stressed enough. Anyhow. So I find poker very interesting, and I'm talking like I probably dissect, I don't even know, like 15 or 20 hands a day in the Zenith Discord. It's just so interesting to me. And so I keep on with this, and then I graduate college. So my very last semester of college is when COVID hit the US really hard. And so the campus sent us home. And so I was like living with my parents, nothing to do, everything's closed. And so all I do is grind online all day, every day. That's all I do. And that's really what turned me into a poker pro. Well, it wasn't really like I made a very conscious decision one day to turn it into a poker pro. It was just, this is what I do now. And I was still like job hunting vaguely. And like, I'd have the occasional interview like every 2 or 3 weeks or whatever, but I wasn't really that interested. I was really vested in poker. One day I just found myself so deep in, I was like, I had a different girlfriend at the time, by the way. It was my last, like the summer after my last year of college, and my dad thought I was dead broke. And I was like, Dad, I have like a lot of money. All I've been doing is just grinding 200NL online. Like, this is all I do. And he was utterly shocked. He was actually speechless. And so, my girlfriend and I get our own place, and I'm just again grinding. And this was I don't even know, early. So by this time it's like early 2021. And I've kind of made a name for myself. I'm a coach for Zenith, and it kind of all blends together. Honestly, there was never a day where I was just like, okay, now I'm a poker pro. It was more just like I made a bunch of money and I got my own place. And so and this is how I got the money. So I don't know.
Let me also jump in here really quick. I also want to say a few things. The reason why I smiled so much when you said like I was lower middle class and I didn't have the buy-ins that I needed and everything. I had the same. If some people know me, they also know that I was lower middle class. So we have a lot in common. I was also growing up being a lower middle class. At some point, I had some projects that I tried. Some of them failed. At some point, I was nearly homeless, right? And then I think, there was a point where I said, all right, like you see what's possible, either like on TV or like you have some friends that have an amazing lifestyle and you're like, I want that too. And then you start pushing and then you start to make sacrifices, right? I'm sure you had the same. You start to sacrifice parties or I don't know, vacations, whatever. And you're just in that mode where you're like, okay, I see light at the end of the tunnel and I know it's possible. And then you like grind. And then at some point, that's exactly where you ended your story. You wake up and you're like, hey, I have a lot of money. And then people around you, they are shocked. But you don't have this moment where you're like, now I'm a poker pro. It's just like you go on and you're like in the tunnel and you're like, bam, 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 bam. And then I'm here. And
I mean, my parents were like just speechless that I had somehow found a way to make a living for myself at 21 years old. It was I mean it so to be clear, it's not because like I have some like supernatural information. It was I just kind of stumbled into it and I just happened to be kind of good at it. And during COVID, that's all I did. I didn't have any expenses. I was living at home, eating out of my dad's pantry. And, so, it worked out. But absolutely. And that was a big struggle, honestly. Moving to Las Vegas was, I had several poker friends here who were, strictly financially speaking, way above my level. They're just, for instance, like I went out to dinner like a month ago with some guy and we had like this $3,000 bill. I'm like, do you know who I'm not rolled for a $3,000 bill. He just like invited me out to this dinner and he was like, no, I got it. It was hilarious. And it's, it's just kind of how the gambling world works, is like, everyone's just like on such a different level. So.
Yeah. And then interrupted you. What was the last part of your story? So we ended up in early 2021.
Yeah. So, I mean, getting into, so I ended up, so my girlfriend and I at the time ended up separating and, I just ended up grinding a bunch online, but while I was still in Texas, and I played a bit of live here and there. Definitely don't enjoy live as much for whatever reason. I'm not exactly sure. I think it has to do with the slow pace of the game, but, so I just played a bunch online and, I had a very cheap lifestyle. I don't drink and a bunch of other things. It's just a very no frills lifestyle. So, basically, a friend I met through Zenith, we go on a vacation to Las Vegas after I go through this breakup because I'm like feeling kind of butthurt over the whole breakup thing. And we go to Las Vegas and he's like, man, we should just move here. And I'm like, actually, that kind of sounds like a great idea. Let's just do it. So we did. And it was fantastic. It was one of the funnest years of my life. And, played a bunch online and I don't know. It just kind of feels like now I'm here. It kind of feels like yesterday that I moved to Las Vegas, honestly.
Yeah.
But like I have a new girlfriend now. As far as like major life events, that's really the only one to report. So
So
just kind of still doing the same thing.
What would you say to someone who sees this interview and says, all right, I'm also at the stage where I start to play NL25, maybe, take some shots at NL50. And maybe he's not sure if he wants to be a poker pro or takes a job, as a software engineer or whatever.
It's very funny you say it's very funny you say this. I have a very, very good analogy. So let's say say you're in a single raise pot in position, right? Okay. On some ace high board, and you see that second pair on the flop, and the turn goes check, check. And then you face a half pot bet on the river, and you're thinking, I could call or I could fold. I have a bluff catcher, right? He's probably value betting top pair. What you haven't considered is the fact that you can raise. And the reason I say this is because you have to consider the EV of all the options. Like, okay, you could go pro in poker, which probably nets you positive, but you have to consider the EV of every option. And that's a life skill, is really dialing into there's always going to be an option that's very enticing, which the mistake at mid stakes is often just calling. But often the EV of some other option isn't as obvious. But if you think about what happens if you take some alternative route, is much higher. And so, poker could be that alternative route for you, but you have to very, very carefully consider the EV of all your options. And this is absolutely a life skill, and it's much easier said than done. But it's very important not just take the safe route because it yields you positive expectation. So it's very important, in my opinion, to very carefully consider all of your options.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Very good analogy.
Yeah.
You also had some questions about entitlement tilt, right?
I could go on for days. Yeah, of course.
So what specifically were your questions about this topic?
As far as entitlement tilt goes, I would say my first question would be, how to word this. What do you think this is a very broad question. What mental barrier do you think regarding entitlement tilt, do you think stands between the standard poker pro and making a very sound, concise decision?
Decision in terms of in-game or decision in terms of live events?
Specifically in-game. In-game.
Okay. So what I always do with my clients is they have to understand that when it comes to mindset, we always talk about different levels. So sometimes people come to me and they're like, oh, I have a tilt problem. And then you give them one small tip and everything is solved and they never tilt again for the rest of their life. Right. Sometimes it's so deeply rooted in the childhood that you need to talk and try this, try that until you find the solution to it. Right. And there are multiple layers between that. Right. So to answer your question, it really depends on which level you're in. But I would say that the most common blocks, yes, of course, there are so many forms of tilt. Could be entitlement tilt, could be, I don't know, for example, things that you don't even think of. For example, you play poker and before you started your session, you had a conversation with a friend and he's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And he gives you negative energy, or you have a fight on the phone. And then you play poker and you're like, oh, this idiot, and you raise just because of the phone call, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. There could be so many options, really. It could be that you're afraid because you have a downswing at the moment. You're like, oh, if I raise here on the river, as you said before in that analogy, right? If I race here on the river, it didn't work out the last 3 times. I know it's the right decision,
right? Yeah,
but
for sure.
The fourth time I'm folding, because I'm just afraid. So
exactly,
it really depends on that layer, and I think it all starts with self-awareness.
Yeah. So specific to entitlement tilt, this is also a big issue I had with live poker is, I put in these hundreds, if not thousands of hours of study. I go and play live, 2-5 or 5-10. And this guy that doesn't know what Pio Solver is snaps me off on the river in a spot where I have a bluff 1% of the time. And he's right. and then I proceed to just, all I can think about for the next 4 hours is how this guy just snapped me off in a spot where I never have a bluff. If you could, so this was Josh a year ago. If you could talk to Josh a year ago when I'm sitting at that table at the Bellagio 510 and I'm about to tilt my face off, what would you tell him?
Yeah,
I'm actually very curious.
Yeah. So I think, as I said, right, it could have many layers, but I think the most obvious one is probably the relationship to variance, or the relationship to bad players, let's say. Mm-hmm. So the reason why poker works, the reason why you said before, I have a lot of money, like to your dad. The reason why poker works is because the variance keeps the bad players in the game. Mm-hmm. They think like, oh, I snapped you off, I'm the best poker player. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had a client, he said like, it was a very similar situation. The guy snapped him off in a spot where he should never do this. And the guy screamed, he's like throwing the cards, like I
just windmilled it.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. And he screamed, and he's like this, like celebrated completely. And of course, my client got tilted because he's like also he's not just that he's making bad decisions, he's also celebrating his stupidness.
Yeah.
So of course it's easy to get tilted, but what I tell my clients here is that in this moment you want to take a step back and understand like the whole system. And the whole system is that poker only works because of players like that, because of the bad variance. So a lot of people, they have a negative relationship with all these things, right? Like the downswing and like people snapping them off and stuff like that. But in reality, it's the best thing that can happen. The person that snaps you off will come back always. He will always come back. He will never stop playing poker.
Exactly. Yeah. Like entitlement tilt is the lowest barrier of mental game, which ironically was like still to this day is one of the biggest for me. And it's really like, in most cases, probably is just like you ran bad. And you just got like snapped off by the guy who just never folds top pair, and in the one spot you have a bluff or whatever. Like it could just be whatever. It's just like if you run bad, you're just going to run into a lot of entitlement tilt. That's just how it works. So during a downswing, the mental, the cogs that are moving in a human's mind, I found through experience, unfortunately, are very bizarre during a downswing, because I'm very aware of all the work and time and discussion of hand histories I've put into the game. And then, I'll just go on this very, very long break-even stretch. I had to experience recently, which is very unfortunate. However, I think in the long run, it'll be positive, for my game. But the mental gymnastics I've had to go through during that stretch is just insane. So first I'd like to ask, but before I get into my specific journey with like mental game and tilt and stuff, I'd like to ask the biggest forms of self-doubt you come across with clients? And two, what is your, okay, to be concise, the biggest mental block you find with clients going through a downswing, and then the most common solution to this mental block?
Yeah, very simple.
Again, very simple.
Yeah.
We'll start with that, and then I'll get into like my shit.
Yeah. So I think the biggest block is the following. If you as a poker player, if you just take a look at your results, the money that comes in, or the money that you lose, depending on if you like upswing, downswing, whatever. If you think your results are in touch or connected to your skill level, it's the start of failure. Because what happens is people came to me to say, I'm on an upswing. Yeah. They make a lot of money, more than they should make. Yeah. And they're like, I'm a poker god. I feel like the poker master, I feel like the god of poker, which obviously is not true. Yeah. It's just that they run hot.
Yeah. Just to jump in real quick.
Yeah.
So I had a good friend of mine who I also coach. But he messaged me and he was like, I'm taking a break from poker. I'm going on vacation for like a week and a half or whatever. And he's like a grinder, very unlike him. And I was like, well, what happened? And he was like, I'm on this downswing and this and that. And it was just very unlike him. But it explains like, okay, like they had this realization, like maybe I'm not as good as I thought or whatever else. It was just it was an aside, but anyhow.
Yeah. So the same goes in the other direction. If you think that if you're on a downswing, you're like, bad in poker, or, like you start to doubt yourself, of course you go like, on a roller coaster. And this is what you mentioned before. It's very draining. It brings you like, it makes you face a lot of challenges because it's like a roller coaster in life. And it's very hard for the mind to realize, on Monday and Tuesday, you feel like the poker god. And on Thursday and Friday, you feel, like very, very low, and you doubt yourself and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the mind cannot realize that, right? It's like, how is it possible that within a few days, you feel extremely good and then you feel extremely bad?
Yeah, exactly.
So the solution to this is to start focusing on your performance. And there's a system that I have in place with my clients. Is I tell them exactly what they need to focus on. And just imagine the following, all right? You're in Vegas, you say, all right, tonight I'm playing live poker. You go there, this was the best poker session of your entire life. You never played better in terms of decision-making and like performance and concentration, everything, but you lose money. You will go home, and of course you won't feel extremely good, but it's fine, right?
Yeah.
So this is when performance work comes into place. It's not that you don't focus on the outcome of the session of like, oh, how much money did I make? It's more like, how did I play? And if you play extremely good poker, of course, what comes next is you will make money. So it's not about what comes out, it's how you play, basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's a very eloquent way to put it. It seems nearly impossible. Like maybe someday I'll be much better at it, but it seems like close to impossible to just separate like my current emotional state from, the state of my results. I try my best, but it's like, Simon gave me a suggestion when I remember this conversation vividly. I've been playing, I don't know, 25 NL on Bovada for maybe 2 or 3 months or something. And I sent him this graph of me going on this heater, and I had won like 10 or 12 buy-ins or something. And he was like, don't look at your buy-ins for like 2 months. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And, in my current state, I'm still not at Simon's level of, mental transition or whatever, but it makes a lot of sense as to why, if you're playing to win, why you would just not want any attachment, real, short-term attachment to your results. Of course, like if you're grinding out a year and you look at your results and you're up 2 bigs per 100, you should really reevaluate, what's going on. But of course, in the case of most pros, it's, as far as mental game struggles go, it's just like, oh, I lost 4 buy-ins last week. I suck. It's a very easy trap to fall into. Mm-hmm. So,
and also, sorry to interrupt you. Also, very important to say here is, I know that there's a lot of misconception here about mindset coaching and stuff in general, right? People always think like, I only need a mindset coach when there's something wrong with me, or when my mental game is weak, or when I tilt a lot. But there's so much more you can do, like performance work and improve. Like if you're a good player, you can always improve and get better and stuff like that. Yeah. So this is really important at this point to throw in here as a side note.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I also worked with Simon. I don't know if you know that, but I also worked with Simon, and Simon had an amazing mental game, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about mindset a little bit. We also had some other topics we wanted to work on, but like his poker mindset was extremely strong.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, and honestly, like, it's just a testament to, I think, even without a mental game coach, if you just like grind every day for countless hours over the course of a decade, you're just gonna become numb. You just, if you're like an actually winning reg and you're not like moving, if you're not like, so there's an aside here, right? Like if you're not like, of course, if you start the decade at 500 NL and at the end of the decade you're at 20K NL, it's going to be much different. But if you just grind 500 NL for a decade, you're going to have enough money. You're going to have a role. You're going to become so numb to the regular swings that it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same mental game you're battling. However, that's not the case for 99% of poker pros. Mental games are, a huge part, and it's really just finding this middle ground of being okay with whatever happens, even if you're not happy about it. That's sort of the current state I'm in. I'm not complete Zen, and I tilt my face off sometimes, and I'm just like, oh my God, this monkey just did this on the river and I lost a huge pot. Happens all the time. And just because I know a lot about the game does not make me immune to these things. So
yeah, and at some stage you realize that, because that's also something that for example Simon asked me for. At some point you have a lot of money. At some point you realize, okay, I have a strong mindset, and then you want to work on other areas of your life. Mm-hmm. Right? Because just like money can open a lot of doors, but you need to realize which doors you like more, which doors, are the right for you.
That's a very good point to bring up. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's not just that, like I always like split it in 2 parts. So the first part is, like when you really struggle with poker, or when you want to improve your poker mindset, let's call it that way. It's a nicer way to put it. You have tilt topics, maybe you have performance topics, you maybe self-doubt, fear or something comes into play. And then I would say at some stage, you're so far ahead of your competition. You play, I don't know, NL 10K, 1K, whatever, right? Depends on how long you play poker as well, of course.
Right.
And then you say, all right, now I have the money, but what's next? Because just having money is like, you don't want to like grind 100 hours a week until the rest of your life. You will have unlimited money, but you're not really living, right?
Yeah, it's not a life at that point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it can't. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it definitely has to be brought up when you're talking to a community of professional gamblers, like when you got into professional gambling, there was something you were working towards. And maybe, at this very current moment, you don't have like something very specific, but a lot of people do. And if you don't do now, you will eventually. And I think it's very important to keep that in mind. Honestly, like I have a girlfriend. I'm very happy. I think we're going to stay together long term and have a great life together. But it's I don't really know what I want, 30 years from now. And so I think it's important to kind of like stay in the moment, and whenever that time comes that I do start to realize what I want, that I'm like present and there for that, and I'm not just like so engulfed in the grind and the study and all of this that I just miss out on it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I think that's also a good point to wrap things up. Anything you want to say or share with the community or the viewers?
I would just say, I think most of the people watching this are going to be somewhere between like casual poker players and like semi-pros, right? And to you, I would say figure out really what you want out of your life, and poker may or may not provide that for you. And that's not my job to figure out, and it's not Karim's job either. However, if you do, start to take poker seriously, you should really give sufficient time to dedicated to figuring out your mental and emotional state and how that will affect your play, because there is absolutely zero doubt in my mind that I might be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars richer or poorer based on my mental and emotional state while playing. And that's not an exaggeration, by the way. I'm not, Karim did not pay me to say that. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, figure out really what you want out of life. That's why we're all here. And, if you have any questions about anything regarding that topic, feel free to message myself or Karim. I'm sure he'd be happy to help. So yeah, that's really my piece on the whole thing.
And of course, I put all your links down below in the description. So if someone wants to get in touch with Josh, then of course, feel free to reach out to him. And I mean, we know each other for a long time. I heard amazing stuff about you. So
yeah,
you're doing great work.
So briefly, the last 2 minutes of this video, I want to give the story on how I met Karim. It was the summer after COVID hit the US and live poker had just opened back up. And the very first time I'd ever talked to Karim, I don't even know how we got introduced, but basically we had a phone call and I was grinding live 1-3. I'm not exaggerating. Live 1-3 at a shithole casino in Oklahoma. Okay. Middle of fucking nowhere. And I was in a comped hotel room. It was like the shittiest hotel room probably on the face of the earth. It's hard to say. And it was like 8:30 in the morning because, we have very different time zones. And I remember we had a call and that's how we met. We talked a little bit about like dating and poker and like some other stuff. I don't remember exactly, but that's how we got introduced.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you said,
now we're here.
And then you recommended a friend to me, and then I worked with your friend.
So I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. And now we are both very close to Zenith, I would say.
Yes, very.
Yeah. And then we decided to create this podcast here.
Yep. Fantastic. Yep.
Awesome. So thank you for joining, and that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time, Karim.